Hey everybody, how's it going? It's me, Logan Joyce, aka Suburban Yinzer. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 74th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry Regiment. I got my Union kepi on, and I got my Army of the Potomac shirt on. These are all the symbols of the Army of the Potomac, and to be specific, this is the crescent moon right here. That is the 11th Corps' symbol. So each one of these symbols represents a corps of the Army of the Potomac. The crescent moon was of my ancestors in the 74th Pennsylvania, and the 11th Corps was primarily German. They were a German corps. I think it was estimated 75% of the corps was ethnically German. Not only born in Germany, but also born here of German parents and grandparents. So regardless, before we get into the regimental history and the history of the 74th Pennsylvania and Gettysburg and my ancestors that served in the 74th, I wanted to show this beautiful piece of art that I bought at Gettysburg in March for the 74th Pennsylvania reunion. So there's a sculptor named Gary Castile who is in Gettysburg and who makes these beautiful sculptures that basically depict the regimental history. But these sculptures just aren't random. These are the legitimate, I would say replicas. Yeah, replicas of the sculptures on the battlefield of Gettysburg. The battlefield has many regimental sculptures, as this is the sculpture to the 74th Pennsylvania Infantry Regiment. And this replica, or this sculpture that Gary created, depicts my ancestors' regiment. And Gary, was the first time we met, he signed this sculpture and put a Made in USA sticker, which I absolutely love because it's a personalized item. And I thought it was special because when I went to the 74th Pennsylvania reunion, I didn't expect to go into Gary's store, basically right across the street from East Cemetery Hill, right a little bit down from Evergreen Cemetery. And I didn't expect to go into that store and meet him personally. The man's a genius. He is an artist. He's an appreciator of history and of art. And he combines these two passions into something that is one of a kind. And when it comes to this sculpture on the battlefield on Howard Avenue, this is the monument dedicated to my ancestors who fought during the Civil War and specifically at the Battle of Gettysburg. But this original sculpture on the battlefield was dedicated on July 2nd, 1888 for the 25th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. The thing is that my ancestors, I don't know if they were present for the dedication, but I know that only one of my ancestors was alive during the dedication. I don't know if he was there or not. That was Henry Rebel. But the year before, 1887, my fourth great-grandfather, Henry Christian, who was actually at the Battle of Gettysburg, he died in 1887 in Pittsburgh, or specifically Southside. So I don't know if he ever went back to Gettysburg. But this replica that Gary created, I met him, and the fact that he signed it was amazing. But to see the detail and the structure and the authenticity, that's the word, of this sculpture is absolutely remarkable. I mean to have this piece of history in my hand, and especially how it represents the Battle of Gettysburg and how my fourth great-grandfather, Henry Christian, was present at the battle. It says 74th Pennsylvania Infantry, German Regiment, because it was a basically exclusively all German segregated regiment. It was primarily all German. And it was part of the 1st Brigade, 3rd Division of the 11th Corps. And it says July 1st, fought here from 2 p.m. until the Corps fell back. July 2nd and 3rd in line with division in front of the cemetery. And then, just like the monument at Gettysburg, since this is a replica, it gives you the regimental details about what happened to the regiment in the beginning of the war and in the end of the war, and at Gettysburg. And at the Battle of Gettysburg, 2 officers were killed and 8 men were killed. 4 officers wounded, 36 men wounded, capture or missing 2 officers, 58 men, which is a total of 8 officers and 102 men at the Battle of Gettysburg. Present at Gettysburg, 381, and one of those 381 was my 4th great-grandfather, Henry Christian. Now, a little side note, see the crescent moon right there on the side? 11th Corps. So, let's get into the nitty-gritty, and let's get into the... Oh my God, I almost forgot. This statue is beautiful. It has the Pennsylvania coat of arms in the middle, which I love, because this is a Pennsylvania regiment. The best state in the Union, without a doubt. So anyway, let's go into the details. So my 4th great-grandfather, Henry, which his German name was Heinrich Christian, he was known as Henry, was born June 4th, 1818 in Oberkaufungen, Kassel, Hessen, Deutschland, Germany, and immigrated to America and settled in East Birmingham, which is present day the Southside Flats in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where my dad's from, and his ancestors and his ancestors and their ancestors. I mean, it's been going on since 1847 in Southside. It's ridiculous. He enlisted in September 3rd, 1861 in Pittsburgh, and was discharged December 5th, 1864 in Pittsburgh. He enlisted when he was 43 years old and was discharged when he was 46 years old. He was the only ancestor in my bloodline that was at the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, I have relatives on my mother's side of the family, boys down in Virginia, who served in the Battle of Gettysburg for the 19th Virginia Infantry Regiment, but they were distant cousins and uncles, and they weren't blood. They weren't direct genetic DNA relations. Now, as for the Battle of Gettysburg, just to geek out a little bit, because that's what the video's about. It's about geeking out and, learning and history and all that. Where do I start? Where do I start? Well, I start with just a little bit of detail. So don't crucify me and say, well, look, this is boring. This is what the video is about. It's about the details. In Gettysburg, for many Indians that don't realize it, Gettysburg is one of the most popular and most important battles of American history. I mean, without Gettysburg, the Union doesn't win the war. Period. Which I'm not saying is a good thing or a bad thing, because I'm neutral. I got mother side's from Virginia, the Confederacy, and my father's side's for the Union in Pennsylvania. So I'm not like this, go Union or go Confederate. I'm half and half. I don't care who won and who lost, but the Union won. So, it's a pretty important United States of America piece of history, regardless. So, the 74th Pennsylvania arrived at Gettysburg on the afternoon of the first day of July. And for many Indians that don't realize this, it was probably one of the hottest days of 1863. It's ironic. And it was humid, it was muggy, and in the morning, going into 11 o'clock in the morning, these men were running up the Ebbetsburg Pike from the border of Maryland into Pennsylvania. So my 4th great-grandfather, who's, I would say, 45 years old, 44, 45 years old, is running in a wool uniform with a kepi. He's hot, he's sweating, he's dying. And he is also born in 1818. So just a little side note, my 4th great-grandfather, Henry Christian, is one of the oldest privates or oldest enlisted men in the 74th Pennsylvania. And from my historical research, I think he might have been one of the oldest in the brigade, in the 3rd Division, or maybe even the 11th Corps, all in all. Just saying. My 4th great-grandfather, Henry Christian, was just as old or older than most of the brigade commanders, division commanders, and some of the corps commanders on the field, both sides, Confederate and Union. He was a very old, wise, and experienced man, and a veteran of the Hessian Army in Germany. when he was in his 20s. So this man had some experience and had some wisdom for the young boys in the 74th Pennsylvania in general. So they really looked up to him, not as a NCO, not as a sergeant, but as somebody who basically could call the shots and knew what was going on periodically during the course of the battle. So they reach Gettysburg and they connect with the First Corps' line at the north side of the battle. And to give Jens a little bit of insight of what that looked like. So here's the battle. Here's the battle as it transpired. They ran up the Emmitsburg Road, which that's right here. So they ran up this road here, went through the town of Gettysburg, came right there, and this is Howard's 11th Corps. Howard was the Corps commander, and they connected with the 1st Corps here to stop Ewell's Corps from coming down. And they had a good resistance here at the north side of the battle. They fought toe-to-toe for a couple hours going into the afternoon. But throughout the course of the day, the line broke, which it was going to, but Barlow's knoll up at Barlow basically gave way and was stupid by giving that huge bulge here, which the Confederates completely, took advantage of, and they pushed the Corps back, and also the 1st Corps pushed back through very recklessly and very chaotically through the town of Gettysburg until they went back into their fallback position on Cemetery Hill, where they would fight through the course of the night and the evening of July 1st, going into July 2nd and July 3rd, 1863. But the very ferocious aspects of the battle occurred on July 2nd on Cemetery Hill. So, but during the course of the battle on the first day on July 1st, 1863, the enemy was already in front, and their fierce fighting opened immediately. Colonel von Hartung, himself in command of the skirmish line, was severely wounded, and Lieutenant Colonel von Mitzel, who had but just escaped from imprisonment, succeeded him, unable to preserve its disjointed lines against the overpowering forces of the Confederates pressing down upon all sides, like I already said. So this is what it looked like on July 3rd, July 2nd, July 3rd. So as you can see, the fishhook is starting to be created down Cemetery Ridge. So the Union Army is establishing the fishhook here at the Battle of Gettysburg. The Confederates are automatically occupying the town of Gettysburg and trying to penetrate the fishhook, because this was where Lee made a big mistake, and this is where Longstreet, in my opinion, was right. Lee should have retreated and should have went back into a field of his choosing and retreated and brought the Union back into his trap. But Lee, giving him the benefit of the doubt, there was no time and there was no second chance, if you know what I mean. You're not going to have this opportunity again when you're in the enemy's territory. You're in Union land. You're in Pennsylvania. You need to win a huge battle, especially on Union soil, in order to show the world that the Confederacy means business and that they deserve freedom and independence. I could completely agree with that. The Union was on its heels, and after the battle of Chancellorsville, the complete embarrassing loss at Chancellorsville, the Union had to do something great. They had to win at Gettysburg. But this is the idiot that caused the embarrassing loss. Well, not caused it, but caused the 11th Corps to basically get thrown under the bus. And my German ancestors basically were thrown under the bus at Chancellorsville because of General Howard's stupidity, which Karl Schurz, commanding the division that my ancestors were in, he's also German. He's not German. He is a nativist, anti-German, anti-immigrant idiot who thinks that he didn't have to listen to his German commanders and German men at the Battle of Chancellorsville. And General Jackson, Stonewall Jackson, completely took advantage of that and routed the Union and routed the 11th Corps and basically made it look like a walk in the park. But at the Battle of Gettysburg, the Union wasn't going to make the same mistake twice, especially the men of the 11th Corps, especially the Germans, who were literally thrown under the bus by the Union press a month and a half before, or a month before, in May and June 1863, they were not going to be labeled the scapegoats ever again. They were not going to be labeled cowards and the cowardly Dutch, the Flying Dutchman. So they held strong up here in the Fishhook, right here at Cemetery Hill. They knew that the Confederates wanted to penetrate into Cemetery Hill. And Cemetery Hill is what it sounds like. It was literally a hill where the Evergreen Cemetery was on. And the Confederates were trying to push up that hill and trying to basically create a hole to basically flank that position, flank the Fishhook, and push it back. And that way they could just push this Fishhook back, penetrate it, and completely take the high ground and win the battle, in essence. But the Germans of the 11th Corps, and in particular, my fourth great-grandfather, Heinrich Christian, he being a 45-year-old man, is not going to allow this to happen. Him and his German comrades are standing like a stone wall. In Chancellorsville, the month before, Stonewall Jackson absolutely embarrassed them, but they weren't going to allow that to happen again. So they stood strong, stood proudly like a bunch of German immigrants that they were, standing up for a country that invited them in, that they were literally sacrificing, bleeding, and dying for. They were going to do everything they could to protect the Union, protect their families, and establish a future in the Union for their descendants. And that's, in essence, what this monument means. This is what this means to me. This isn't just some piece of beautiful granite or stone that was carved out. This is a symbol of the blood, sweat, tears, and toil that was given to me through my ancestors. Not only my fourth great-grandfather, Henry Christian, but also his son, Reinhardt. Reinhardt was killed he was shot at the leg and then died after the battle's Second Manassas, or Second Bull Run. He was 20 years old, serving in the 74th Pennsylvania. And he lost his leg and then died 2 days after of an infection. And his brother-in-law, my third great-grandfather, Henry Riebel, he was shot in the arm at the Battle of Chancellorsville in Virginia in May 1863, and then was discharged about a year or two after that. So the blood, the sweat, the tears, and the toil that were given by my ancestors during the Civil War is what I want to encapsulate into this statue and into this monument, and what I want to present to Yins. And I want to honor them, because without those men, without those German immigrants, without immigrants in general that served and fought and defended the Union during the Civil War, not only the Union, but also the Confederacy too, these men did not want that war. They didn't feel that they had any skin in the game. They were immigrants from Europe. The Germans, the Irish, the Polish, some of the Italians, some of the Eastern blocs, or the English, Scottish, they didn't feel that they had any skin in the game in particular, but they knew that this war was detrimental, and it was so important, so crucial for their children, for the Union, for the Confederacy, for the countries in general, that they had to fight. They had to scratch and claw in order to earn the respect and the dignity that they deserved. And that is what this monument means in Gettysburg. It's a depiction, it's a symbol of the honor and the sacrifice of my German ancestors. And that is why I love it, and that is why I present it to Yins on this video. And I hope Yins learned something, and I hope you enjoyed the video and enjoyed my presentation. I know it was very, summarized and very, scattered, but I can't make an hour-long video. So, this is what I got. This is what it is. And I hope you enjoyed it. So, peace out and have a good day.